started on this workshop. This is a recording to the workshop. Unfortunately, we couldn't record it in person, but we are doing a take two for the folks who are getting this recording. I'm one of the presenters, Nahaira Valdovino Soto. I'm the Youth Engagement Coordinator. And I just want to give a quick disclaimer. We are not legal providers. We do have training on immigration law and can provide advice. And we've also have training on filling out DACA, doc forms. So that's why we're here giving as much information as we can just from our lived experience and sharing those wisdoms with other folks to kind of pass on that shared knowledge, right? So with that, I'm going to allow my compañera Regina to introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for watching our video. So I'm Regina Molyara. I use she, her, shall pronouns. I'm the youth organizer with the Inland Empire Immigrant Youth Collective. And we're really excited to present this again for y'all and for y'all to be able to have access to the resources that we'll be presenting today. Okay, so who we are, we're the Inland Empire Immigrant Youth Collective. So first and foremost, we're an undocumented youth-led org by and for undocumented youth. And we were founded in 2010 to create with the intent to create a safe space for immigrant youth to express themselves and to also reach their pursuits and dreams despite their intersecting identities or their undocumented status. And so some of the things that our org is grounded in is community building, youth development, creativity, and artistic expression, healing and restorative justice, and civic participation and political education. So basically how we do those things is through providing services and resources for the community. So for example, we do DACA training and workshops, and we also offer one-on-one guidance for those workshops. And we also do California Dream Act workshops for students. We offer healing and self-care activities, and we also assist with enrollment into Medi-Cal. And something else that we do for youth development is our Undocumented Mentorship Academy, UMA. We have some people here on our screen who are part of the UMA program. It's where undocumented mentors are matched up with undocumented mentees. And it's basically a way for mentors and mentees to learn from each other and to grow and to really reach their potential. And we also support various campaigns in the region. We're supporting in the region, statewide and national. So some of those campaigns that we support are Safety Net for All, Health for All, Shut Down Adelanto, and the Freedom All campaign. And we also promote health and wellness because we realize to sustain this kind of movement, we also have to take care of ourselves and in order to take care of our community. So we have Undocu Health conferences, immigrant health advocacy, COVID-19 resources, and we even have Undocu Health ambassadors who help to make all of this possible. I don't know if we wanted to do the icebreaker. I think we could just skip it for today. For folks who couldn't be there in person, it was called Hepa Parade. Basically, you just go, you have a group of people in the front of a room, maybe 4 to 5 people. And then the host, I suppose, points at someone and they go, hep hep. And then the second person that they point to afterwards goes, hooray. And then it just goes really, really fast. And then the trick is that you could keep pointing at someone to keep doing the whole, the hep hep hooray thing. And that's what tricks people up. So it's a fun game. If you have the chance to play with your friends or your family, I really recommend it. So for our agenda today, we'll first be discussing the different types of immigration relief with the focus on TPS and DACA updates. We'll be giving a rundown of the immigration system and who qualifies for both of those federal protections. And we'll also be going into reconciliation process updates For folks who don't know, Democrats in Washington, D.C. right now are trying to include immigration reform into the reconciliation bill. And I'll be talking more about that later, but we will be going through ways we can advocate for our undocumented immigrant communities and how y'all can take action. And for our final item on the agenda is self-care and wellness resources. So as I said before, to sustain our movement, we want to stress that self-care is important, not only for ourselves as individuals, but also as a collective. So we'll be doing a wellness exercise to close out our workshop so that everyone leaves feeling grounded and motivated to continue this work on the ground. So then I'll just pass it off to Nahaira, who will be taking us through the DACA and TPS update.
Thank you. And apologies if there's like background noise. This is what happens when you're working from home. But yeah, so I always like to provide like a good just like breakdown of the immigration system because it just helps me. I'm a visual learner just to see the systems that I'm navigating and see the different components, right? So yeah, so I'm not going to focus on all of it, right? Because it's a really complex system, but I do want to just highlight just the big parts of it. So as you can see on your left-hand side, yes, left-hand side, you see the Department of Homeland Security. And y'all can think of that as the entity that's kind of like the head honcho, the guy who kind of tells or whatever, the entity that tells different, like for example, ICE, CBP, and USCIS what to do essentially. And the only ones who are really above them is the Secretary of Department of DHS, right? They're the folks who kind of to get the head honcho within that space. But also there is a president, Congress, and Senate that can probably impose some regulations or laws onto DHS to enforce it onto the other entities. So yeah, they're the largest player, essentially, DHS within this immigration because they enforce laws as well as within the United States, but also at the border, right? Because we have CBP, right? And again, as you can see, the three sub-agencies within DHS is ICE, CBP, and USCIS, but I'm not going to cover ICE or CBP just because for the point of this workshop, it just doesn't seem like a thing that should be touched on since we're only talking about processes, which is like programs like DACA and TPS today. So USCIS, as you can see, it's the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. They make basically, they kind of process all of the forms from DACA, TPS, asylum, refugees, any visas, even like naturalizations, waivers of inadmissibility to application extensions about non-immigrant statuses, right? So they basically have the formal judgment and make the final decision regarding these benefits within the United States. So yeah, that's kind of who they are. They process a lot of them. There is other aspects within USCIS, like there's some court systems that can process final appearance notice, right? And that's basically is the initial start of the steps towards deportation process, right? But like I said, we're not going to focus too much on that. Just the point is to cover the DACA and TPS, right? So if you can move forward now to the DACA slide for me, Regina. And so again, I also like to just provide just a breakdown of like what we currently have, right? To really see like who qualifies for this program and to just be more intentional and even in reflecting, right? Like, is this something that is benefiting just a portion of our community or the rest of our community, right? Because I think there's just always this saying that I kind of engrave in my organizing is just like, if one of us is harmed, then we're all harmed, right? So if one of us is not included in this, then all of us are also harmed in this lack of inclusion, right? So these are just some of the who qualifies for DACA, right? It's very limiting. As you can see, one of the biggest one is that you can't have any felony. As simple as a DUI can be something that can bar you from not being able to apply to DACA, right? As well as other like maybe domestic abuse or like maybe sometimes even like other major crimes, right? That, or not even major, but even simple crimes, right? That can be on your record, that can stop you from getting DACA. Another big portion of it is that you have to be here since 2012, basically, in the United States, just because that's when the program was initiated. It was on June 15, 2012. So anyone who came after that is probably not going to qualify for DACA, as well as like you have to be here continuously residing since June 15, 2007. So again, if you weren't here since 2007, then you unfortunately would not qualify for DACA. And as well as a big portion of it is like this idea of being able to use this program to continue school or to be or continue your work, right? So that's something that I think really just kind of touches on the idea that DACA has been more targeted towards the ideals, like the messaging of a model minority, right? Of someone who doesn't have these XYZ, and that's why they're deserving of these programs. But I think for this workshop, I just want to plant seeds to really have you question that and question like, well, what is a model minority, right? And why do they like to kind of pin the community against each other? Because that's kind of what they're doing here, right? By not including all 11 million in programs like this, right? So, and another big portion is age. So if you are over the age, we're over the age of 31 when as of 2012, then you would not qualify. As well as if you were underage, like if you were 16, or if you're too young than 16, then you wouldn't qualify for DACA. But another big part is that you currently have to have no status at all. So when you are applying to DACA, you cannot have another visa or another program. You simply can only apply to DACA. So that kind of, again, leaves out a lot of folks in regards to this program. So I guess this is just more of a slide to remind us like what we have and remind us that this is not enough, that we deserve more as a community, right? And yeah, next slide that's also going to touch on what the benefits are. So next slide, please. So yeah, as you can see here, we have, oh, can you go back to the previous slide with the benefits? Sorry, thank you. So yeah, and again, this slide is just to remind us that of what we have, but what we deserve more. Like, I don't think 2 years is enough to just have like deportation protection, right? As well as a work permit, that just doesn't seem reasonable to me, especially since this program is almost 10 years old now. Like there should be more than just 2 years, because if you think about it, that's every 2 years you're paying almost $500 to just continue to use this program, right? And on top of that, there is the possibility of advanced parole. So you can do advanced parole for humanitarian reasons. For example, you want to work abroad or study abroad, as well as like maybe someone in your family is sick or someone has passed away, or you yourself can't have need medical treatment that's not being provided in this country. Then those are the main reasons that you'll get it. But additionally, it's an additional cost. So it's like $600, and it's kind of like I would say like a gamble, because you're not sure that you're going to get approved, and you might just lose your money. And additionally, even if you do get the approval, you don't know how long you're going to get. It can be a month, it can be a week, it can be a year. It all depends on how the USCIS officer determines your case. So it's not consistent. Another thing is that it's just because you get the advanced parole and you can leave. If, for example, you are trying to come back in, the officer has the authority to deny your entrance for whatever reason it might be. So that's another big risk of this, is that there's no real like pathway for folks to actually travel abroad without the risk of not being able to come back, right? Another big part is applying to student loans, right? As well as having a social security. Those are some benefits as well. But again, it's not what we deserve, right? As human beings, to be stuck in limbo for every 2 years, right? And waiting like, oh, I need to renew now. I need to renew. Human beings deserve to have some consistency, right, in their life, to be able to plan and to be able to thrive and succeed in whatever they choose to put as their goal for their future, right? So yeah, so the next slide, we are going to cover some updates. And yeah, so these updates, I love this little picture of our youth kind of doing their first like DACA. This was when DACA was first announced, and they kind of were so upset, like many folks were, right? Of the fact that this judge from Texas, the same judge that started the first fight, right, in the court, which is wow, it's full circle, honestly. I don't know why they gave him full power again. But he basically said on July 16, 2021, that as of right now, DACA, he believes, is a program that should be ended. But he also kind of said like, hey, I'm not the only judge. I'll leave it up to the other folks to decide. But at the time being, though, initial applications are, he said, they're not supposed to be processed, right? Until there's a final judgment. So there is some updates, right? Because like courts, we've lived the experience of fights in the court, right, with this previous administration, and we know how long that can take. So that's just a reality we all very lived through. So we all know kind of what to expect, right? There's something at the end that we're hopeful for, right? And just so you know, there has been an appeal already submitted in the Fifth Court Circuit. So that's already kind of good news, right? It took us a while to get to that that court the previous year, so that's already some good news. But what does this mean, right, for initial applications? Like I mentioned before, initial applications are kind of just being held. This is why I really encourage y'all to seek help from a legal provider to just so that they can assess the risk that you're going to be taking. Some of the risks might be, you know, losing your money, as well as what does it mean, like, for my information that I've submitted, right? Those are all risks, right? So it's important to have that legal provider so they can do a pre-screening to see if you have any like criminal records as well, right? But I do know that some folks are submitting their applications initial and just waiting, right? Because they're just being held. USCIS is not accepting or rejecting, they're just holding it. So they're just hoping, I guess, until something happens with the courts or something happens in politics, right, that allows these applications that are being held to kind of move forward in the system. So that's kind of the hope that folks are holding on to. But just please don't believe any notario or any notario or any other lawyer who's telling you like initial applications are being processed and or like promising you citizenship, right? This is why we're here, is to share you that that's not what's in talks right now. Right now, it's just they're being held. So please just remind that and share it with your other community members. But what does it mean for renewals? Renewals, it just simply means that you are able to now use advanced parole because of that Fifth Circuit appeal. So you can use it, you can apply. I personally, I'm looking into applying myself. I'll keep you all posted on how that goes. But also we are recommending to continue to renew. Every 6 months, you know, within that 6 months grace period, you should be renewing. Because you don't want to renew right when you're like the month before you're expiring, because we do know that it's USCIS sometimes takes a while to process your application, and you don't want to be left like wondering like, oh, what am I going to do for work? Or because that's a real life fear, right? But there's another component within this, what's happening with DACA, right? And I think the biggest component is again USCIS. So Department of Homeland Security, the big head honcho, submitted kind of like a notice of changes to USCIS, a proposed notice. So they're saying like, hey, we want to make some changes to DACA. And they listed out various changes, but I think the biggest change that's going to affect a lot of folks who maybe are applying to DACA, but maybe don't want to work because they're maybe young, right? So the changes, for example, they said that if you just want the 2-year protection, then you can just pay $87. But if you also want to get the work permit, it's going to be $410. So altogether, it's still going to be $495, but it is giving folks the option. And I think it's a good option, right? Because some folks can afford the $495, but they can't afford an $87 application, right? So yeah, that opens up a lot of options for folks, right, who have been previously barred because of cost to apply to this, to DACA. So so they're opening comments. USCIS is, you know, an entity that welcomes comments. Previously, they've done it for public charge. Now they're doing it for DACA. So for these changes, they are asking folks if you want. And they did propose the changes on September 28, 2021. So it's pretty recent. So they are saying that they're going to allow comments up until November 29th, 2021. So basically up until the end of the November. So you have about almost a month and like 2 weeks of October to take action, to basically voice either in support of what they're doing, as well as like maybe against if you're like, I don't really vibe with that. But it is an opportunity to kind of begin to kind of flex your power as a community member, as a person who's directly impacted as well, right? To show that, hey, I have some agency, let me share what I want in regards to what's happening with DACA. And so, yeah, we do encourage y'all. There is a link that we'll put at the end where you can take action and you can screenshot all of that and take action on your own time. But we do encourage you to do it because I just like to remind folks, like DACA was not something that was given to us. So we had to fight really hard. Folks were putting their bodies on the line, from like you doing hunger strikes to invading offices, knowing that they didn't have protection from deportation or arrest, right? So they were really going all out for this program. So I think it's just to honor their work, our elders in the past, who are yelders, I guess, at this point, right? They're very young, so they're not really elders, but to honor their work, to continue that fight, right? So that's, we are gonna invite you to take action. But I just wanna go back and just kind of debrief, like, what does the changes for USCIS mean for initials? So if for some reason nothing happens in politics and no court rule is made in regards to DACA, then as of November, they'll probably take a month or two to review all the comments. So hopefully maybe by then they can, if nothing has changed in politics or in the courts, then USCIS is going to move forward with these new rules. So you might hear some new updates. So we also, at the end of this workshop, have a QR code you can scan to be part of our mailing email listserv, so you can get updates whenever any changes to DACA happens. So yeah, so for first time applicants, what does this change mean, right? If it is implemented, like I said, this implementation could open up more pathways for folks who have been barred, right? But there is a theory that a lot of the lawyers are kind of speculating that if they implement it, because part of the language that they put on the proposal is to say that they said like, well, we're gonna basically bring back DACA to what it was in 2012. So their idea is like, well, if they're bringing it back to its original state, that means initials are going to be processed. And the only difference is that they're going to split it up for if you want to pay only 87 or 40 or 410, or if you want to do them together, right? That's kind of the biggest change. So that's why folks are theorizing that, like, if this is passed, then maybe initials are also going to be processed. But I'm not going to say it's a guarantee, right? Because language and can change, and they can fight and advocate for, to make a case for why this language means this, right? So just keep a close lookout for what's happening, and stay in touch with us, because we'll also be able to provide some updates. But as of right now, if nothing has changed, just reiterating, initial applications are just being held right now. But please talk to a lawyer to talk about the risk you are taking if you are applying as an initial application. For renewals, again, this change won't do much for renewals. You're still going to just continue to renew and apply to advanced parole. That's still an option. The one thing I do want to share for folks is, like, when you are renewing, please make sure that you're doing a pre-screening with your lawyer just to check if you have any criminal records, because oftentimes folks forget about that. And then once they submit it, they get a red flag on their application. So always just, even for renewals, go to either a lawyer or a accredited representative, which we have a lot of partners ourselves. So yeah, I think that's kind of it for this part. We'll have some actions later in the slide, but next slide. All right, so TPS. What is TPS? So I'm not gonna lie, I'm not an expert on TPS. I've been trained mostly for DACA and support with DACA, right? But what I do know from the research that I did with the National TPS Alliance, those are the folks that I think are the experts in TPS. So if you wanna know more, please go to that website. They have a lot more resources. So yeah, basically this is a program. It's more, you can think of it as a humanitarian program. It's for folks who have been impacted in their country, home country, whether it's politically unstable, right? Or it's like an environmental issue, like a tsunami, earthquake. One example would be like the Haitian issue right now that's happening at the border, but that's its own complex issue, right? But that would be an example of like some folks who are impacted and are seeking refuge because of instabilities in their countries. So that's basically what TPS is. Who qualifies? Again, just naming it, because a lot of folks think that this is what the only thing they deserve. But if you really like put it on paper and you name it, you're like, this is all they're giving me. And then you can actually advocate for more, right? But yeah, who qualifies? Basically, it's anyone who is a national or a national citizen of that country that is under the TPS program. So there's a lot of countries are like about 10, and there are 2 additional ones that have been added to the TPS program. And just so you know, the TPS program is kind of like who gets it is determined by I believe the Secretary of Homeland Security. So they kind of just dictate like, okay, your home country seems pretty safe now, so we're going to cancel the TPS program. So it's as simple as that. Like folks can have their lives be unstable just by one decision of one person, right? That's why it's always important to advocate for more, right? So and another part is you have to be continuously residing, right, and present in the United States since your country's TPS designation as well, right? As well as one of the big part again is pose no threat to the U.S. for nefarious criminal or national security related reasons. So again, it's very similar to DACA. They're kind of still kind of using the model minority kind of language and messaging of like not having any sort of criminal record, right? But yeah, so I think it's just important to name because it's important to name it so we can fight for more. Yes, I think anything else I wanted to add? Oh yes, one other big thing I've learned from this is that TPS like renewals, you do require periodic renewals. And what I learned, which was kind of like mind blowing to me, is that the renewals are at the discretion of DHS. So they determine whether or not the conditions that prevent the person from returning persist. So again, just kind of touching on, we did mention the Secretary of Homeland Security, but as a whole, DHS does have dictates when you can renew, right? And if you can renew. So that's just something, again, how much this entity holds in regards to the decisions they make for that impacts people's life. Yeah, so what are the benefits though? We named who qualifies, right? So the benefits are not as much as DACA, as you can see, not very much. As the biggest portion, 2 biggest ones that are very similar to DACA is a work permit and protection from deportation. Again, no set time frame. It just all depends on DHS and how much time they give you. And another portion is advanced parole. That's a really awesome benefit. But again, it's an extra payment of $600. And again, it's the same risk that I listed before. They might not let you back in, or they might not give you enough time as much as you want. XYZ, so many unstable parts to advanced parole. So yeah, and again, just want to reiterate that there isn't a fixed time frame for the duration of TPS, right? It's just all at the decision of Secretary of Homeland Security. So yeah, next slide. All right, so what's currently happening? So currently, I just want to emphasize that, you know, there was a threat to TPS with the Trump administration, and currently, right now, there's been some changes made, and I guess you can say TPS is saved of some sort, right? So folks right now who are under TPS protections, you're still protected. Your permit is still valid. But you know, if you do need a renewal, if you need a check on your renewal, please do so by you can go to this website. It's uscis.gov/humanitarian temporary protection status, or you can just go to USCIS and type in TPS, and you can figure out, and they'll give you like a link or just options as to what country you're from and like when you need to renew, because they'll have the little dates. But again, always reach out to a lawyer as well, because lawyers can help you and not feel so overwhelmed when you're doing this alone, right? And another thing, kind of already teased it on the previous, is that there is 2 new countries that have been added to the program, which I guess is really good to hear, right? One of them being Bermuda and Venezuela. So again, just be more welcoming to more folks who are seeking refuge from political instability or environmental issues. As we know, climate change is probably going to increase that, right? Unfortunately. As well as, again, if you need to renew, there is a free legal bit.ly right there. It's bit.ly /IANIM help. a little hard to read from my end. But yeah, you can for sure go on that website and check out any free legal support near you. But if you want to just reach out to us, we can always connect you to some free legal support as well. And again, I do want to just share that there is a link right there. It's the QR code to take action. It's kind of linking back to the reconciliation process, which Regina will touch on. But it is asking for, you know, Congress to step up and not just include some sort of pathway for TPS, but for DACA, for the essential workers, for the farm workers, yeah, for folks who've been deemed essential, right, but haven't really been treated as our farm workers have for many years, of DACA recipients, or TPS, all these folks who need to be included to something more stable than just a 2-year permit, or a permit that you just never know when it's going to be renewed. It's you're just at the expense of DHS, right? And that's no way to live, right? So I hope you all can take action for your community and for yourself as well, because we know that when you take action for others, it's almost like you're also doing the practice of advocating for yourself too as well, right? Yeah, so with that, I do want to move on to the next slide. And that one is just a brief slide. Like, I'm not going to touch on all these different types, but I do just want to voice, and the reason I have this is just to voice that there are other options that folks just don't think about as some sort of relief. Like, for example, like my mother, she's someone who lived here for many years, and an incident happened to her at work. And it wasn't until she met with her lawyer that kind of told her, like, hey, there is a possibility for you to get a U visa, but you do need to get an immigration lawyer to begin this process. So it wasn't until then that my mom's like, oh, wow, I can actually have some sort of pathway to some sort of status, right? Some sort of relief. So I just share that story just to, you know, plant seeds, to just put that word in your mind, like, what is VAWA? You can at least just ask your lawyer and be like, hey, I've heard of these other options. Can you tell me a little bit more and see if I qualify for them? Because that's what your lawyer is for. I think this is also a good practice and a good reminder to tell folks, like, your lawyer is supposed to be someone who's working with you, and not someone who you have to like pull teeth to try to get you to support them, right? So yeah, if you get a good lawyer, they're going to go through all the pre-screenings and try to see what other options of relief you qualify under, and give you the best description and even like steps of how to go about it, right? And one other thing that I like to just share, just because sometimes folks get a little caught up and they're like, man, I don't even qualify for DACA or TPS or any of these, is just this image right here from Julio Salgado. He's an undocuqueer artist who I think is just reminding us that we are more than just our status, that we are brothers, we are sisters, we are cousins, we are partners, and we're teachers, and all of that is valuable regardless of our status. So I just want to leave you that with some little positivity, because I know personally just how hard it can be to take a no that, oh, I don't qualify for this program or that program, and you feel kind of like devalued. But just remind yourself, you are very valuable regardless of your status. You are someone's brother, someone's sister who they really love and support. So you are valuable to them and to us as a community member. And so with that, I'll pass it on to Regina to go on to the reconciliation updates.
Okay, thank you, Nahaira, for going through all of those different options for folks. So now I'm just going to be touching on reconciliation updates. So what is the reconciliation process? So the reconciliation process is basically a way for Senate Democrats to pass legislation without going through Republican votes. So the reconciliation bill, it's supposed to include a $3.5 trillion in social spending. So one of those things that folks on the ground and organizers are trying to push for is immigration reform in this bill. And it's not just about immigration either. It's about including healthcare in this, Social Security for folks. It's like a myriad of different things being included in this bill. But one thing we do want for sure is to include a definite pathway to citizenship for our undocumented immigrant communities here. And so the goal is to include a pathway to citizenship. And initially, the first proposal was for LPR status. So green cards for undocumented immigrant groups. So DACA recipients, TPS recipients, farm workers, and essential workers. And the latest proposal included changing the immigration registry date to 2010. So basically what happened is the Senate parliamentarian, she's like the head honcho, I suppose, in this situation. She is the one who can approve or reject the proposals that the Senate Democrats are proposing. So the Senate parliamentarian has unfortunately rejected both of these proposals for being included in the reconciliation bill. And she said multiple times that she just doesn't feel that immigration should be included in this package, and that like it isn't deserving of the amount that is being proposed into this bill. And specifically, Senators Manchin and Sinema are also against including immigration reform in this bill, which it begs the question of like, so Democrats control the Senate and Congress right now, yet the Biden administration and the government in general is not delivering on their campaign promises, right? So what is next in terms of reconciliation is folks are trying to focus efforts on Vice President Harris to use her power to ignore the Senate parliamentarian. That's her power as part of the executive branch of government, right? And so she has the power to ignore the parliamentarian's ruling and take action herself to fulfill the campaign promises that she's made, right? And she's from California. California is her home state. So this is in her best interest and in her constituents' best interest to pass this sort of landmark legislation, right? So basically what's happening is it's all like pretty much still up in the air, but Speaker Pelosi has set a soft deadline for October 31st to reach a decision. And so the Democrats' new strategy is to push for immigration parole. And so what y'all need to know is that folks on the ground are trying to hold these Democrats in Washington accountable, right? And specifically the Biden administration, who included immigration reform in their campaign promises, and holding them accountable for like the immigration injustices that continue to happen, namely with our Haitian asylum seekers at the border who are being deported. And so folks are on the ground and mobilizing and organizing towards action as we speak. And the truth of the matter is like we won't really know anything definite until the end of the month, if that, right? But so the point of this is just to keep an eye out, because folks on the ground are still pushing for a pathway to citizenship. We're continuing this movement that's been going on for decades and decades now, and we will not stop fighting for the rights and things that these folks deserve. So these are just some ways to take action, as Nahaira said. So this QR code on the left is to send a public comment for Home is Here. And if you can, please send it to 2 friends so you can also take action and really advocate for DACA to continue on. And this QR code on the right, it's a more comprehensive, and it includes the latest update on including immigration reform into the reconciliation bill. Yeah, and we really just want to make it an important, I guess, note that advocacy is important, because it doesn't just start with ourselves, it's also for our communities and international solidarity with all oppressed folks, right?
Yes. And with that, is just kind of like another just quick thing that we wanted to add to this workshop is not just like the advocacy part, but the wellness part, because we see you as a whole person. We understand that, yes, immigration, and that's important, but we also know that you need to tend to other aspects of your being to fully like feel, healing, thriving, whatever it may be, right? Empowered, uplifted, like all these good feelings. So I just loved watching this beautiful picture, just because this was our first workshop. After our DACA action, we had a wellness workshop, because we're like, our youth and our members are telling us like they want to, express their their angers and angst with community, but also have a space to hold each other and care for one another. So these are all like directly impacted community members, organizers, just mothers, aunts, brothers, all just coming together, just being in the space because they felt called to be a part of a community, to heal another and empower one another. So we're actually working on another workshops, and hopefully we'll bring them next year to community members and to schools, and events like this, right? So that folks can have a little bit of a practice of caring for each other, because it's important to care for everyone else, but also to bring it back to you, because you can't fill anyone's cup when your cup's empty, and it doesn't serve you at all. You're going to get eventually burnt out, and no one wants that. We want you to keep you in the movement and keep you in community, right? So with that, I do want to just share a little bit of like what grounds our values, or why we're doing this work, and a huge shout out to our compañero Hector T. Plasencia. They are someone who's been just really a key person we go to for just guidance. And we've actually used this framework in various other spaces, just because we just felt like it resonated so much with our lived experience and how we organize. And so, yeah, they're someone who's doing some awesome stuff. He's an undocumented queer trans advocate. So it's just like they're out there, taking up space and holding space for others. So yeah, this wheel just kind of acknowledges that, hey, we're all in the same struggle. We're just kind of taking different path, which is why we all have different ways of caring for each other, right, and sustaining ourselves. That's something that we are acknowledging, because we're all different human beings living different lives. So we have different ways of feeling loved and caring for one another. So this framework kind of provides us with a context in which we view ourselves as beings that are complex, right? Acknowledging that, as well as also being able to fully understand our needs and what we need to be able to do to, care for ourselves, but also work with ourselves, understand that the systems we are navigating has caused us harm, and be able to identify and name those feelings, I think is really important. As well as one thing I do want to emphasize is I do not want to victimize folks, because at the end of the day, we want to celebrate the body that's brought you here, because this body, regardless of the challenges you face, has survived and is still breathing and living right now, and has sustained you to this moment. So I think it's just honoring that, and celebrating that as we navigate these systems, to avoid any burnout, any other folks who are being lost to the movement, right? Because yeah, so this is a beautiful, if you want to take a screenshot, please do. If you want to shout out Hector, they also have a little @ sign there, Hector Plasencia, they're on Instagram. They're beautiful just sayings and of how to care for yourself, and just reflections that I just always just follow, because they fill me with a lot of joy myself. And they call this work called movement magic. So it's already, I love it. I can talk about Hector all day, but instead of doing that, I will allow Regina to take lead in providing us an example of how we can start to care for ourselves. And as a disclaimer, if this doesn't vibe with you, at least you acknowledge that, and you can at least start exploring other exercises that vibe with you. So yeah, take us away.
Yes, thank you, Nahaira. There are so many different ways that you can care for your health and your wellness. This is just one of them. So there's plenty of resources. If you hit our line, we could provide you those wellness resources for sure. But so this exercise is focused on spiritual health, and it's a forgiveness exercise. So for folks who don't know, spirituality is the drive to experience what is meaningful in life. And so I feel like a lot of folks associate the term spirituality with religion, which it's not. It is part of religion, right? But it's not all of it. And so being in touch with your spirituality is part of having faith, but also connecting with yourself and your body and your emotions and your feelings. and also the world around you, and like to find those moments of joy and those moments of peace within yourself and with the world around you. And so it's just this is just a tool for us and yourself to create and bring awareness of what meaning we have in our lives, right? And so oftentimes we are really hard on ourselves, and so we forget to take care of ourselves and our bodies and our spiritual selves, essentially. So this exercise is intended for folks to begin to forgive yourselves. We're really hard on ourselves. We're like in our everyday lives, it's like go to work, go to school, facing these like systemic barriers that continue to cause us harm and cause us trauma. And so because of those things, it can be really hard to become in touch with your spiritual self. So this exercise is for folks to begin to forgive yourselves. And as we know, healing isn't linear. Forgiveness can go at many different paces, depending on the person. So if folks watching, I invite folks who are watching to participate in this exercise, if you will, if it's calling to you. So let's begin this journey of forgiveness. So go ahead and close your eyes and place one hand on your heart and your belly. And feel the beat of your heart. You can feel the air going in and out of your lungs and belly. Get comfortable. If it calls you, close your eyes. If it is uncomfortable for you, you can go ahead and keep them open. And I encourage y'all to take these next few minutes to pause and focus on yourself and your body. Focus on what your mind and your body are telling you. If your mind starts to wander, that's okay. Just acknowledge your thoughts and let them pass, because this moment is about you. You can repeat these next few affirmations out loud or to yourself, whichever your mind and body is calling to you. So if you will, repeat after me. This is a difficult process to learn and practice. I promise to be patient with myself. I promise to allow myself to learn, reflect, and act upon in a calm state. I promise to forgive myself for any way that I have caused harm to myself through judgment, action, self-blame, indifference, knowingly or unknowingly, in thought, word, or deed. May I forgive myself. May I allow myself to be a student of life and to make mistakes. May I forgive myself. And if I cannot do so in this moment, may I be able to forgive myself in the future. And slowly, whenever you're ready, open your eyes and come back to the space that we've cultivated together, and allow yourself to be in peace. So now I'm going to pass it back to Nahaira, who will be sharing our wellness resources.
Ooh. Well, for those who were in person and who are probably getting the video, you have a nice little treat. So thank you, Regina, for that. It was beautiful. guidance from you. Your voice was very soothing. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, we just want to leave you with more wellness resources, just because, like we said, healing's not linear. So you're going to always need these support groups with you, or like these resources. One of them I really want to highlight is just the DACA mental coping guide. I think it's really important. Like, I think I've noticed, like when I was first applying to my DACA, I remember just how emotionally drained I was, like just to question my own worth, to even just stress about, like, am I going to get it? Like, what's the risk? Like, it's just a lot of emotions that you're carrying throughout that process. Even when you have DACA, or when you already have the whatever program you're under, right? Or even if you already have citizenship, I think even that process of naturalization is probably going to be very, emotionally draining for you. There might be feelings of guilt or resentment, XYZ, right? And it's important to kind of work through that for your own self-acceptance, right? Another one that I really want to highlight, just Informed Immigrants Mental Health Guide. They have a lot more resources there. They're doing a really great job in providing a lot of just mental support to folks in our community, right? Undocumented community. Another one that we like to plug in is Latinx therapy, right? It's more specific for Latinx folks, but they do provide other, like if you look on the search engine, like, and you type in, they do provide other alternatives, not just Latinx folks supporting Latinx. They do provide other options. And the biggest one that I think, I personally would invite folks, just because, healing can be easier when you have community members joining you, right? So that's why I love how Immigrants Rising are also providing some group sessions. So they've already started, but, I'm sure you can still join and still keep a lookout for when they do restart, right? Because it's important, again, to not think that this healing journey is just on your own. Like there's a saying that they use for college, but I think it can be used in any process or any journey, as it takes a village to support you through that journey, right? So please lean into those resources and lean into community, because that's what we're here for, right? Community is here to support you when you're feeling a little down, and as well as uplift you when you're feeling like you're feeling yourself, So with that, I think we're gonna close off now with leaving you with some information of how to connect with us. If you're looking for more wellness resources or just other events, like we are hosting an API coming out of the shadows. That's going to be, let me get the actual plug. So before I start talking, I'm like, I don't even know when it's going to be. But do you know, Regina, before I start talking and not say accurate information?
Yes. So the date of the event for Coming Out of the Shadows is October 28th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And we really just want to make it like a space for undocumented immigrant HCI folks to share their stories and to come out of the shadows and to feel safe in our space as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you want more information, you can email us at that email, or you can DM us on Facebook or Instagram and be like, hey, how do I register for the Coming Out of the Shadows? And we'll hook you up with a link. Because honestly, storytelling is the reason why we can continue to build community, and it's really what fuels the movement, because in the stories is how we see like the lived realities and the issues that we're living, right? And be able to name those and even name what vision we want for the future, right? The changes that we want to see. So yeah, speaking of changes, I do just want to highlight this beautiful picture of us during May Day. May Day, for those folks who don't know, is an opportunity for folks. It's usually a labor rights kind of action, but I think now in the IE at least, we've kind of made it more of an intersectional event, where we're not just talking about labor, we're talking about immigrant rights, we're talking about women rights, we're talking about XYZ, right? Environmental rights, right? So yeah, if you ever just want to stay in touch and like get up to date on when we're having more of these events, you can follow us again like on Facebook, but you can also scan that QR code to be enlisted in our monthly subscription letter. And we don't spam, we try to just do it once or twice a month because we know that, yes, emails can be very overwhelming when they stack up. So yeah, looking forward for y'all to connect with us and share, like, if you see events on our Instagram, please share with others who might need it, because you never know, right? So yeah, with that, I don't know if you want anything else to say, Regina. I always have a hard time closing off these. But
I mean, I guess the last thing I would like to say is that this is our history right here. We are a part of history, and we're making our own histories right now. And to echo what Mahara was saying is about storytelling. It's important to tell those stories, right? So we remember our histories, and so we can pass it down and keep resisting against these powers that continue to put us down. So yeah, I hope to see all of you, some of you, at our event, and to stay connected with us.
all right, and with that, we're gonna stop the recording now.